Okay, so we're just going to have a quick tour of Digimap. Digimap is a service provided by the University of Edinburgh, providing access to data to do with mapping for academic institutions, higher education in particular. You can just type Digimap into your browser and you'll probably find this place, but that's the address up there at the top. And this is what your screen should look like when you finally get there. When you're here for the first time, you need to, or anytime, you need to log in. If it's the first time you're here, then you will probably have to find, certainly have to find the name of your institution first, which is University of the Arts London, and then put in your ID. So I've been here before, so I can just click on it. And I log in with my usual username and password, and now logged in, you can see. You may well have to prove your academic credentials by confirming an email just before you can log in for the first time. Okay, so we pay a subscription as a university to access types of mapping data here. So we don't pay for everything. So geological, environmental, aerial, all of that, I don't think we pay for. We just pay for Ordnance Survey and historic data. So if you just click on historic here, you can see submenu. It's black and white imagery typically because it's scanned maps from the past that have been then put into a database and aligned with a map of the UK so that you can search a particular area and find historic maps and mapping of that area. Most of this will be available in this top button where you view, annotate and print a map, and that's kind of going to produce image files, bitmapped files, PNGs and JPEGs and PDFs. You can also download historic data as well if it's available. But primarily, if you're looking for a historic map of an area you're interested in, this big button here at the top is the one you want to go to first. And this is what you're presented with. And you can see for the historic Rome, which is what we are in, you can see across the top, you can obviously search postcode, find places. But you have a succession of decades across the screen. You can see from the 1840s to the 1990s and then contemporary. And basically those are how they categorize the maps that are available to you. To begin with, looking at the whole of the UK, they're all grayed out. And so you can't see a historic map from the 1880s of the whole of the UK, for instance. Instead, we need to zoom in to a particular area that we're interested in. So we're going to just get the zoom tool over here and narrow our focus a bit on London. Here we are. Okay. And then we're going to narrow it further. Now what we could do is you could type King's Cross in here as a location. And you've got King's Cross Station comes up and we'll go there. Okay. And at this resolution, you can see that we now have mapping available from the 1870s, 80s, 90s, and then 1920s, 30s, so on and so forth. But you can see that this is partial. You don't always get the whole area you're interested in. That's because basically the physical maps for that particular area are not available. Or they're not available on the system. So what you can do is change the era you're looking at and see if you've got more data available. So here we are looking at King's Cross in the 1880s. You can zoom in a bit more and see. Once you go beyond a certain zoom level, the detail is not there. And perhaps, in that era, the map's not there. But you could zoom in even further and you might find a map from another era is available. So you can flick through the decades. Here's in the 1890s, 1920s, and you can see the railways and the extent of the railway lines dominating King's Cross at this era, 1930s. Still there. Let me zoom in a bit more here. Nope. Okay. And you can see the canals coming through here, for example. This is where Central St. Martin's is currently. This is Camley Street Natural Park, which was not a natural park at all at this point. And Rufford Street is up here. York Way is just here. And this was what we call Goods Way now, but wasn't called Goods Way. Well, not the site that we know it anyway in the past. And this whole area dominated by the railway infrastructure in the 1940s, 1950s, still persisting, 1960s, 70s. 70s, it's beginning to thin out. And the 1990s, it's already quite far gone. The 1990s is the era before they built the Channel Tunnel and before they built the high-speed rail link. Well, it was after they built the tunnel, but before they built the high-speed rail link to St. Pancras. St. Pancras is down here. They extended the station and built the railway line through here, and then it curved round through here, like that. And that's not built in the 1990s, so you can see that era. We can zoom into different areas. So we could zoom into Rufford Street, for instance, here, quite tight, and look back into the past, 1870s. And you can see actually, in the 1870s, there was a quite detailed map of Rufford Street. And as you zoom in, there's quite a detailed one available. And you can see the major feature that's been lost is the Great Northern Cemetery Station. And that the actual tunnel entrance has changed from a curved entrance here in the 1870s to, by the time the 1890s came along, it's now got the recognizable entrance that we know now. And the station perhaps has fallen into disuse here. By the time we get to the 1950s, lots of lines here still going through that tunnel. And the sand and gravel depot has arrived in the 1970s. And so forth. So this historic data, useful for showing the context of your site and looking at the history of things. And you can output this by just pressing the print button, generate a file for printing. Okay. And at this point, you can specify a format for your file. You can have a PDF, a PNG, or a JPEG format. PDF is still going to be, for this data, a bitmapped file, image file, like the others. A PDF won't have lines, it won't have vector artwork for historic data like this. So we could just say JPEG, for example. We could say A4 size. If we want to see how much an A4 size of this map in this area would cover, we can go to Layout Preview and see with a modern day framing of the site. So we can make that size bigger. We can go up to A0, and you can see the area included within this site, within this type of map, is going to be much bigger. Okay, so if we're happy with that, we could call it something. We could say, okay, well, this is from, if you remember what era it is, you could say Rufford Street 19 or 18, I think it's 1890s, isn't it? 1890s. It's going to be a JPEG file. Don't need to include a name, and then you can just generate a print file. Okay, so an instant file is available to you almost instantaneously as soon as it's processed. Rufford Street in the 1890s. And that's the level of detail. Not bad. And if you look at the bottom, you can see that the scale is 1 to 750. Okay, and that is the scale of the original map. And you've chosen to render it out at A1 size. So that's the historic stuff. Okay. If we go back to the menu at the top, we'll look at contemporary data. Contemporary Ordnance Survey data is over here. Here, once again, you have at least two options. We have this option of accessing files that are going to be images or a PDF, and accessing data. Now, the data here is vector DWG files, available as DWG files. Very, very useful for CAD, very useful for importing into AutoCAD, and also usable in Illustrator, for example. Up here, limited, less. The most usable one is a PDF. Now, PDF does have advantages. So which of these two should you use? Well, there are advantages here and disadvantages using PDFs, and there are advantages using DWG-CAD files and disadvantages. The primary one is PDFs allow you to, if you output PDFs, you can control the page size and you can control the scale very precisely from the very beginning. The disadvantage is you end up with a PDF file which is combined, and it's complex artwork, complex line work. It's squashed into one layer. It's hard to separate these things out and control how its appearance. The advantage of data, a GIS or CAD file or DWG, is it's very clean. It's in layers. It's in the original Ordnance Survey layers, and you can easily access individual layers, turning them on and off. You can control the appearance of lines, for instance, very easily. The disadvantage is you have to really be careful about scale. You have to watch the scale all the time and be conscious what scale you're working at. So that's what we've got here. Let's have a look at the room at the top first. So here we have a map of the UK again as our starting point. And we can zoom in to London and find our way to King's Cross again. And once we do that, we can save that as a location. So we can just type King's Cross as we did before. Here it is. And here we are. Okay. What you'll see this time compared to the historic map archive is what you have is a series of color maps usually that look different depending on how you're zoomed in and zoomed out. So if we zoom out a bit further, the map changes in appearance, becomes simplified. These are Ordnance Survey maps designed to work at different scales. And so as you get closer in, the database swaps to a different map as you get closer and closer and larger scale. You can see as we head towards King's Cross Canal, we're beginning to get into a lot of detail. And the maximum amount of detail you can get is right here. Okay, and we're beginning to see details around King's Cross that we're familiar with, the Granary Square steps, for example, the bridge, the canal, Camley Street Natural Park, Somerstown Bridge, the Lock, the Gasholder Building, even Goldrops Yard, and of course College. Okay, so this is the kind of maximum resolution mapping. Ordnance Survey maps are updated constantly, and so this is still a snapshot in time. It won't be absolutely as the buildings are currently, but it's very, very close. And you can see there are different colors representing different types of feature. All of these features are available in separate layers. So if you look to the side, on the right-hand side, you can see a navigation system here. So you can, for instance, under My Maps, you can actually save your current location. And so you can get back to it again in Digimap. So we can go save here. We can just call it something like, we can call it Goodsway site. Save it. Okay, and we can head back to open here. And now we can, for example, go to a different location. Zooming out. And somewhere else. And then just click on Goodsway site and get back to this location looking at this map. So that's a very handy thing to have in there. What we're interested in primarily, of course, is to print this and get this output in some way. Okay. Now, to do that, having found our way here, we can just hit the print button, generate a file for printing, and it will do what it did with the, well, we have the same options. So we can specify a scale. We can specify a size of piece of paper. So these are the controls are very handy. So you could say 1 to 200, okay? You could say we want it at a 2, okay? And let's see how much of the map we get in. Okay, we only get that much. Let's take it up to a 1. How much? Oh, we get a bit more. At a 0. Probably there. Okay, and we maybe want to frame it slightly differently. So I actually want to move the side there. That's fine. Okay, so this is now going to be a 1 to 200 PDF, because I haven't changed that, at A0 size. And I'm just going to call it Goodsway. and then we just generate the print file. So it's basically going to create in your computer's hardware a print file PDF. So here it is. Here's the PDF. It's downloaded it. I'm just going to open that in preview. And here you can see it. It's Goods Way. It's my title, 1 to 200. If you scroll down here, it tells you the title. Oh, it tells you the scale, 1 to 200. We just go. Okay. And that's got that information. It's a PDF. Okay, so it's vector-based artwork. It is colored. The lines are colored in some places as well. And it's got all the text and so on. Okay, but that may be useful for you to trace over or use as a basis for map. And you can open it in Illustrator and break it apart and change the colors of these objects. It's a little more complex than working with a DWG file. If we wanted to download a DWG file, we could go back to the top menu here and come into the data side of things. But there's a handy way of going directly from where we are now, looking at this view of the Goods Way site, for example, into getting the DWG kind of data. And that's pressing this button up here. It says use this area in data download. So basically it's saying you framed this site, framed this viewpoint that you want, this location. We can take this framing and go straight to data download and look there. So we just do that. And this is what you get when you come into the data download section. So you notice the interface has changed slightly on the left-hand side, and the map display has also changed. There's like a constant, fairly crude map as a background, but you can see the framing in the previous window has been repeated here. So we can download data contained within this area. This data is lines and text and every feature marked, and it crops to this rectilinear box shape, which is a good thing because actually the data is quite a lot of material. It gets quite unwieldy to work with it, especially in Illustrator, but also in AutoCAD. So if you want a bigger area, just be aware that your ability to work with it in another application may start to slow you down. But this is probably a reasonable framing for this. So what we'll do is we'll try and download data from this area as a DWG file. Now what you have to do here is choose the kind of map that you want. Okay, so previously in the other window, as you zoomed in, you saw the map you were getting. Here you need to specify the map, and you do that from this section on the left-hand side. And the same map that we were looking at in the PDF-ish section is called OS Master Map Topography, that one there. Okay, so we select that. There's other kinds of data for that area that we could include. Okay, so building height attributes, for example, green space, all specific things, all sorts of stuff. Okay, but we're just interested in this OS Master Map Topography. Okay, and now we've specified that that's the information that we want. And what has happened is a button called Add to Basket has appeared. And the analogy here is that shopping, and you're buying something, but you're not actually paying money for it. So we need to add what we've selected, this area of data, to our basket. And then we need to work with the basket slightly. Okay, so the product name is topography. Things we can control, we're just going to keep it current, the most recent version. And the format is the thing we're interested primarily with, which is DWG. That's going to be a file format that we can open both in AutoCAD and also in Illustrator. And then we want a theme, and basically that is the appearance of the map. Standard will try and reproduce the colored areas that we looked at previously in this map. We don't want that. It's quite complicated and hard to work with. Just want plan. Plan is just the lines. Okay, they'll be colored based on the layer that the information happens to be in, but that's going to be the most straightforward one to work with. You could specify individual layers from the list of layers there if you want to eliminate some, but we're just going to go for everything. And we could also give it a name. So we can say Goods Way site. Okay. And we could go back to our map and we could find other areas and we could add these. We could find other types of map and continue to add more data to this order. But once we've got it, well, we're only going to do one here. Then we we press the request download button. Okay, pretty much within seconds you'll get an email from Digimap telling you that they have received your order, the system has received your order, and then a few minutes later you'll get another email that will say that your order is ready to download. So you need to, so basically you retrieve your orders through your email account, and it's obviously going to be your academic email account. Okay, so here's my, I can click on this now. Goodsway site is ready. Very quick. I can just download that site, download that data. And there it is. It's in a folder inside another folder, and that's the DWG file there. Okay, so what I can do now is I can open it in my AutoCAD. And here it is. So here's the AutoCAD file, DWG looking fine. And you can see that it's brightly colored lines often. The color of the lines dependent on the layer that the particular information is in. We'll have another video where we look at manipulating the scale, talking about scale. Just to remember that the information that you've got here is not one-to-one in AutoCAD, it's 1 to 1,000. Okay, but we'll talk about that in greater detail in another video. Okay, you can see if you zoom in, we're looking at these lines and they remain sharp because they're vector based. You can zoom out and see. There it is in AutoCAD. Okay, now if you want to open this in Illustrator instead, there's one thing you have to do before you can open. You can't open the file that you've exported as a DWG file from Digimap directly in Illustrator because it is too recent in terms of version. Okay, so Illustrator is a bit behind in terms of the formats of DWG file it can open. So you really need to use AutoCAD as an in-between point to translate the DWG file from the version that you get of Digimap to a version that will work in Illustrator. So for me to access in Illustrator this file, I need to save it from AutoCAD in a slightly older version. So what I'm going to do is going to type, and I'm going to title it with a version number. You can see at the bottom the file format automatically is the 2018 DWG file format. I need to go back in time to 2010, okay, and save a 2010 version. And that is, whoops, that's the version of file that will be acceptable to Illustrator. Okay, so here I am. I'm saying an older file, slightly older file format, back where I got this one. Save it. And now I can go to Illustrator and open it. Now here you can see Goodsway 2010 DWG. That's the one I want. I open that one. Okay. It's going to ask me certain questions here. I'm not going to answer those questions just now. I'm just going to import that file. I ignore this. And here you have it. Okay. Same information here in Illustrator. Okay. Now we could save it as an Illustrator file. Okay. The white thing you can see in the background here is what's called the artboard in Illustrator. By default, it's A4 sheet of paper, landscape. Okay, so we can make that A2 and change all that. Well, that will be a next video. Okay, so this is how you get what you can get from Digimap, how you can get the files out of Digimap, and initially how you can get them in AutoCAD and Illustrator. So the next video, or future video, will be about working with these files in both AutoCAD and Illustrator. Bye for now.